What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman here for Stokastic.com, back again with the NFL DFS contenders on DraftKings for the Week 4 main slate. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Let me know in the comments, who are your favorite plays for this week? I want to know if you're lining up where I'm lining up. And finally, I need you guys to go check out Prize Picks, presenting sponsor of this video. There's a link in the description of the video. Click it, head on over to Prize Picks, make a deposit. They will match that deposit up to $100. Now, you don't need an optimizer here at all. Sorry, Fantasy Cruncher, for that one, but just not needed for player props. We're talking over-unders. If you can pick 5 on one card, you'll net up to 10x your entry fee. Just do it. Take the free money, everybody. It's right there for you. Now, we're going to talk about quarterbacks and running backs, wideouts and tight ends. You can see on the screen what we've got for the defenses. Steelers at the top against the Jets. Pick whatever defense you want. I don't think it really matters all that much. What does matter are my top 5 across the other positions. We're digging into it right now. Ingram, Ertz, Schultz, Tanyan, Njoku, and then Dallas Goedert in at number 5, 4,500, projected for 10.7 fantasy points. Philly taking on the Jags, 6.5 point favorites, 45.5 point total. You're not rostering Dallas Goedert because he can go for 30. You're rostering him because he's 4,500, and a touchdown is probably all you're really looking for at tight end. 8% likelihood for Goedert to be in the optimal. Most of tight end just looks kind of similar up until that number 1 spot. Next up at number 4, we're going to TJ Hockenson, 4,100, projected for 10.6 fantasy points. The Detroit Lions are 4-point favorites here against Seattle, 48-point total. Again, we're not hoping for 30. We don't need anything close to that, generally speaking. But 8% likelihood to be in the optimal also looks good. Look, 4,100 for Hockenson is a bargain. It's the same as Goedert. It's the same for a lot of these tight ends. There are some guys that can truly break things at tight end. Hockenson is close to that, but not really. Another value option here, Pat FREIERMUTH, 4,200, projected for 11.1 fantasy points. Pittsburgh taking on the Jets, 3-point favorites here, 41-point total. We talked about Pittsburgh as the number 1 defense. It's the same deal here for Hockenson, for Goedert. It's not a gigantic ceiling. It's a 9% likelihood to be in the optimal. What I think is really evident here is that it's very difficult to try to iron out what you want to do at tight end. It's so much easier to just allow your tight end to be a part of a stack. If you have your tight end plus another wideout plus the quarterback, to me, that's just the easier way to go about this. I'm not saying to set a rule that you force this or anything like that, but if you're just building 1 lineup or 3 lineups, just finding a tight end that's perfectly functional and using that as part of a stack is your easiest method to lineup construction. Little bit more of a ceiling here for number 2, Kyle Pitts. He's 5K, projected for 12.7. The Falcons are a 1-point underdog against Cleveland, 47.5 point total. A slightly higher chance to go for like a total moon score, but still just a 10% likelihood that Kyle Pitts is your optimal tight end. It's all bunched up together. There's no difference between Pitts and like David Njoku at 6. It's basically the exact same thing, except for the number 1 guy. And that number 1 guy this week is Mark Andrews, 7,100, a completely different price tier than the rest of these tight ends, projected for 19 fantasy points, a completely different projection than the rest of these tight ends. Baltimore is the underdog in this one by 3 points. It's a 51-point total, so we're expecting a ton of scoring. There's a 13% chance that Mark Andrews goes north of 30 fantasy points. We didn't see that in the aggregate for all of these guys. 14% likelihood that Mark Andrews is your optimal tight end. That obviously looks great. It looks better than any individual tight end. But at the same time, there's an 86% chance that someone other than Mark Andrews is the guy that can get you there. The moral of this story is either pay up for Andrews, who looks really good, or just jam in a random tight end. I know that sounds ridiculous. It's terrible advice, but it's basically true. Wide receiver this week, very flat. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, Brandon Cooks, and Drake London rounding out the bottom of my top 10. CeeDee Lamb in at number 5, 6,700, projected for 17.5. Cowboys taking on my Commanders. 3-point favorites, 41-point total in this one. And it's just like a balanced output for CeeDee Lamb. 13% chance to go for more than 30. 13% chance to go for under 10. Basically 13%. It's 12, but you know, I wanted the alliteration of the numbers to just continue here. We'll say it though. 12% chance that CeeDee Lamb is in the optimal at wideout. That's enough to get him to 5th, but he's like 1/10 of a point away from not even showing up on this list. That's why it's difficult. This is why you stack. You're trying to combine things together in the best possible way so that you don't have to hit 8 individual single bullets. Very slight step up in tier here for $8,400 Stefon Diggs. 21.5 fantasy point projection. Buffalo taking on Baltimore. They are the favorites. We talked about this game before. 51-point total. Real ceiling possibility here for Diggs. 27% chance to go for more than 30. 13.5% chance, so gets him up to 14% likelihood to be in the optimal. If we got to draw a line, we're drawing it between 4 and 5 because you see Lamb, London, Cooks, Brown, Moore, they're all tied at 12%. There's no real separation here, but we got to put that line in between Lamb and Diggs. We're into a different tier at wide receiver. Should be some targets to go around for this one. Richie James in at number 3. If you need value, this is the best spot in my opinion to go to. At least if you need like true bottom value. 4K for James, projected for 12.5. 3-point favorites here for the Giants, but just a 39.5 point total. Not very appealing. You're not going to Richie James for the ceiling. You're going here for the price tag. 14% of the time he's going to be in the optimal. Obviously, we saw Sterling Shepard blow out his knee this past week. James is just going to be set up to potentially see a couple extra targets, but he's not priced as if that's happening. That's why he looks like such a good value, even in a game with a sub 40 total. Another guy into the 14% club is Tyler Lockett, 5,900, projected for about 16 fantasy points. Seattle here against Detroit. They're underdogs, so I guess you're expecting him to throw. 48-point total also looks pretty good. 11% chance to go for more than 30, but there is a bit of a floor here. But 14% chance to be in the optimal just looks good because he's sub 6K. There were times where we saw a much higher price on Tyler Lockett. We don't see it now because, well, that's what happens when Russell Wilson's your quarterback and then you trade him out for Geno Smith. But in terms of like a mid-tier option, you're going to find very few options that look better than Tyler Lockett. My number 1 guy this week also matches my number 1 defense. That's going to be from the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's DIONTAE Johnson, 6K here, projected for 16.5. They're the favorites against the Jets. We always like that sort of setup. 13% chance to go for more than 30. 16% likelihood he's optimal. The price tag works, the ceiling works, the matchup works. You'd like a little bit of a higher total. You'd like a better quarterback as well, but the combination of everything was enough to make him actually separate from the pack. We have this 3-man tier of Lockett, James, and Diggs, but above it all, DIONTAE Johnson in the number 1 spot. Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, Najee Harris, David Montgomery, if he plays, Jonathan Taylor, and Austin Ekeler at the 5 spot here for running backs. Now, we've got one running back on a completely different tier, and it's probably not even who you think, but we'll start with Ekeler, 7,700, projected for 18.5. We still don't know the status on Keenan Allen as of yet. 5-point line here for the Chargers, taking on the Houston Texans, 45-point total, 13.5% chance to go for more than north of. A lot of fantasy points. I shouldn't even have tried to say numbers there. 7% likelihood he goes for under 10, which I think is very interesting. High floor here for Austin Ekeler. 11% likelihood, though, to be in the optimal. He looks good. That's all I can say. As does Christian McCaffrey at 8,700 if he plays. Projected for 21.5 fantasy points. The 1-point dog against Arizona. 43.5 point total. Floor is there, ceiling's there, 21% chance to go for more than 30. You're waiting for this monster breakout from McCaffrey. 13% chance to be in the optimal, so is in a bit of a different tier, ahead of Ekeler, ahead of Taylor, Montgomery, Harris, Dillon. He's getting up there a little bit. Gets to that number 4 spot. Dude scares me to no end. Part of me wishes he just sits this week so I don't have to end up with too much of him, but it's Christian McCaffrey. One of these days he's going to go crazy. Now, I assume this is the guy most people thought was going to be in the number 1 spot, but he is 3 for me this week. 8K SAQUON Barkley, projected for 20.5. Obviously, again, Sterling Shepard gone. Maybe additional work for Barkley, who knows? 3-point line, 39.5 point total is really sort of the limiting factor for me. There's a 20% chance he goes for more than 30. There is a legitimately high ceiling here. And the floor is pretty high as well, just given the way that he's involved. But still, because of that 8K price tag, still just a 14% likelihood to be in the optimal. He works, he's good, there's no shame in being third, but there are two people ahead of him. One of which is a much different play from a value perspective. $5,500 Josh Jacobs, so $2,500 cheaper than Saquon Barkley. 15.7 fantasy point projection here. Raiders, 2.5-point favorites against the Broncos. 45.5-point total looks good. Now, you don't expect the same sort of ceiling on Jacobs, 6% likelihood, but because of the price tag, he's going to fit a little bit easier. 14.5, we're rounding up 15% likelihood for Jacobs to be in the optimal lineup. Just edges out Barkley, but isn't even close to the number one guy. And that number one guy for me this week is JAMAAL Williams, 6,100, projected for 18.3. That's the best point per dollar play I think you're going to find with someone with a ceiling. Again, the Lions are favorites here. The total is big here. 12% chance that JAMAAL Williams goes for north of 30, which if that happens either way, he's exceptional. At 6,100, 30 fantasy points, 12% of the time, just no doubt about it, has to be in the lineup. Otherwise, you're dead in the water. 20% chance he's in the optimal lineup. The no doubt about it number one running back this week. Now, before we close it out with the quarterbacks, one last reminder: like, subscribe, and notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Let me know in the comment section who your favorite plays are for this week. If you see something that you disagree with, I want to know that as well. And then finally, please go click that link in the description. Sign up at Prize Picks. Get yourself up to $100 on that first deposit. You guys know my stance on quarterback already. It's just bring them along for the ride for the stack. Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Davis Mills, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Daniel Jones in at the number 5 spot. 5,400 for Jones, projected for 18. Obviously, we saw Barkley before. Happy to pair those guys up. I know Barkley's not a wide receiver, but he's still going to catch some passes. 10% chance for more than 37% chance to be in the optimal. I got to reiterate, though, don't worry about this part. Build the lineup out. Figure out your quarterback after you figure out your stack. That's just going to be the easier way to do it, in my opinion. Derek Carr in at number 4, 5,800, projected for 19.5. We detailed out this game earlier for Josh Jacobs, but the 45.5-point total looks good. There's a bit of a ceiling here for Carr if things break correctly, but again, quarterbacks at the top can look so similar. That's why you can see a Geno Smith in at number 10, but also see Lamar at 6. Relative to price tag, you can kind of make these things work however you want. Carr in at number 4. At least I'll have fun talking about the number 1 guy, because there's no fun in talking about number 3, Marcus Mariota. 5,600, projected for 20 fantasy points. The Falcons stink. They're a 1-point dog to the Browns, who I don't think are very good, at least not until Watson's under center. 47.5-point total, though, so we're expecting some scoring. 13.5% chance to go for more than 30. 8% chance, though, for Mariota to be in the optimal lineup. Clearly, the Mariota-Pitts combo, we talked about Pitts earlier at tight end, is the direction you're trying to go if you start stacking it up. Definitely have some options on the Cleveland side as bringbacks. All things considered, Mariota looks good, but at 8%, 92% of the time, it's not him. You could also just pay up for Jalen Hurts. Incredible floor here. 8,200, projected for 25 fantasy points. Philly, 6.5-point favorites, 45.5-point total. You're going here for the floor and for that rushing ceiling. 32% chance that Jalen Hurts goes for north of 30, and you kind of need it at 8,200. 8.5% chance, though, that he's optimal. Clearly, you could put him in there with Goddard. What you're really hoping for when you're rostering Hurts is for him to do a little bit of it on his own. You don't need a crazy stack, like if you're taking the Eagles, because Hurts is viable to score 2 touchdowns on, by himself. After that, if you can get a couple catches for Dallas Goedert, maybe get him in the end zone for a 3rd touchdown, that's what you're looking for out of a Philly combo. And then we close it out with Josh Allen, 8,400, big time price. 27-point fantasy projection, massive. 51-point total, though, looks good. 38% chance to go for more than 30. You need a big game here out of Allen to justify the salary, and you need him to do it. If you're trying to get Diggs with him, you need a touchdown plus out of Diggs. I mean, 10 for 100 and a touchdown is really good. Is it enough? I mean, that's 26 fantasy points if he hits those marks on the dot. That doesn't get him over the 30. Diggs, that is. You might need 2 touchdowns out of Diggs for this combo, but I think it's completely warranted. If you're paying up and you need just raw ceiling, there's nobody better than Josh Allen. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NFL DFS contenders on DraftKings for week 4 in the NFL. Now, there's a FanDuel version of this video around here somewhere, so check it out. Good luck tonight, everybody. And when I say tonight, I mean Sunday. Win some money. That's what we want here. I will be back again Sunday morning for another edition of Contenders.